Patrick Henry. Now, we chose to open the book with a quote from my particular favorite president, because I was alive when he was murdered, John F. Kennedy. John F. Kennedy said, "There is little value in ensuring the survival of our nation if our traditions do not survive with it. And there is a very grave danger that an announced need for increased security will be seized upon by those anxious to expand its meaning to the very limits of official censorship and concealment." We've been warned by both Patrick Henry and John Fitzgerald Kennedy. We should heed those warnings, people. Thank you. I'll take questions for those that want questions, and please wait for the microphone to get to you so everyone can hear, and I don't then have to repeat the question. So microphones, go. The gentleman standing, we'll go to him first.
At one point, one question. Fletcher Prouty 15 years ago said that the tramp was E. Howard Hunt. You talk about it even as a code word. Bay of Pigs was Assassination of Kennedy. But I do have a question. Everyone in America knows that if you're going into a consulate, let's say the United Nations. United Nations, the last time I noticed, was on the east side of New York City, and yet it is considered international territory. Somebody goes into a consulate, they happen to have at that moment a baby. That baby is born as also a member of that country that the consulate exists in. How is it that Guantanamo is not United States territory? The question needs to be
I got a better question. Let's give it back to Cuba, where it belongs.
That's perfectly fine, but as long as the United States says that we have a base there, then we need to conduct ourselves as American citizens, and we cannot say that we can have trials there that are extrajudicial.
I agree fully, everyone, that this is a sham. What Holder, the Attorney General, is doing and not trying them in open court. And I'll tell you why. Here's what's going to happen. You will not hear any evidence. All you're going to hear is what they want you to hear, which will convict these guys. They're going to convict them, they're going to put them to death, and then they're going to come out and say, everybody that questions 9/11, see, you're a bunch of conspiracy theorists. We had a trial, it was conclusively proved that they did it, and that's what you're going to get, people. Those people deserve their day in court. They are not part of the military. So why would they be tried by a military? They don't represent the country. It would be hypothetically like arresting, say, 5 Hells Angels for a crime, and then you're going to try them with a military tribunal because they belong to an outlaw organization? Well, they still deserve their day in court. They still deserve their day in court and should have it so we can hear. Why can't we hear the evidence? I want to hear the evidence. Please, I have questions. Debunk me. I beg you to debunk me. You know, I'm big enough, man. If they can prove to me, I'll come out and say, you know, I was out in left field. 9/11 is what they told us. But right now I can't say that, and documents in this book from our own government also prove it. Wait till you read the chapter or the documents that we found on 9/11. Right here, young lady.
Hi, Jesse. I have a quick question. Are you working on any projects that would address the unemployment crisis? Is there a greater conspiracy to keep so many people unemployed? And do you have any comments about the union busting that's been going on in Wisconsin and Washington State?
Well, officially, no, I'm not looking at anything like that, but I will tell you, I believe when you talk about the union busting, isn't it amazing? They're now blaming this economy on our unions. They're blaming, you know, whether a union worker asks for $1 more an hour or to keep their health care. And by the way, let me add to that, as they like to refer to it, Obamacare. in our country, to me, every citizen of our country should be able to go to the doctor if they're sick. That is a human right. That is a human right. And all these bozos out there in Congress and the Senate that are opposed to national health care, they are the biggest hypocrites walking, because what do they have? They have government-run health care. Now, if they want to prove they're not a hypocrite, then stand up and get rid of your government-run health care. All these congressmen and senators that are opposed, let them get rid of their health care and lead by example, or as my friend Dick Marcinko, the road warrior, would say, lead from the front, not the rear.
Right on.
Because that's what they're doing. They got their health care, but they don't want you to have yours. Okay, let's see, the gentleman in the yellow right there, if we could. You look like you got a big voice, so you might be able to talk without that.
Well, my question is about the bigotry surrounded by marijuana prohibition. Isn't it time that this country, including the elderly in here who don't smoke it, but probably have a young nephew or a grandson who can supply you with it, isn't it time we stop this and try to keep people from being so drunk in this country? And considering bigotry, isn't it time we all boycott Donald Trump and his bigotry?
Well, let me say this for a moment about marijuana. I have a good personal quote on marijuana. I grew up in the 60s. By the way, how do you like my Jimi Hendrix quote? Anyway, here's my quote. Marijuana is to rock and roll what beer is to baseball. So imagine if you went to the ball game to see the Phillies and they wouldn't let you have a glass of beer out there. Well, going to a rock concert, imagine how horrible it is now when you can't smoke a joint. In my day, you didn't even have to go to the concert with anyone. Because the standard operating procedure in those days was somebody toked up a joint that got sent down the line and you never saw it again. And you could go there straight and leave stoned, you know. But, and I'll also state this. I have never met anyone who smokes marijuana and goes home and hits their wife. I have met many people who drink and go home and strike their wives. So, obviously, I'll tell you this. Somebody in this country is making huge profits on keeping it illegal. And the multinational corporations and pharmaceuticals don't want marijuana there. You know why? You can grow it. It's a weed. And if you know anything, you can grow it. I absolutely fully support the full legalization of marijuana. And it's ridiculous. I live in Mexico now. Has anybody read about the carnage that's going on down there? There's more deaths down there than in all three of these wars combined right now. And we have the power to stop it by legalization. Because if my mother told me before she passed away, she lived through the prohibition of alcohol. And she said the war on drugs is identical to the prohibition of alcohol. All we're doing is making criminals rich and powerful. And we have to demand it, people, because they're certainly not going to give it to us. You know, you got all these cowardly politicians who are more worried about their jobs than standing up for what's right. They hold their finger to the wind before they make any decision. Well, rest assured, if I become president, marijuana will be legal. Not only for that, but I want the tax dollars to help cover the budget and get rid of this deficit. Instead of having, you know, all of this stuff, we don't collect taxes on any of this, and there's billions. I was so disappointed with California. They had the opportunity to vote and make it completely legal, and it lost 55 to 45. So I look at it now and say, hey, you got a big deficit, it's your fault. You had an opportunity to help and you didn't. Next question. And if we could, there's a lot of questions. I'm here to give the speeches, not you. I don't mean to be rude. Ask the question and let me answer it without political statements or anything to go with it. I know I enjoy hearing them too. Right over there.
Thanks, Jesse. My question was, I'm an independent researcher myself, so I know what it's like to find this information out and, you know, basically have to live with it. What I want to know is, you know, you being a Vietnam veteran, how were you when you first found out about the Gulf of Tonkin? How did that affect you?
I was irate. The Gulf of Tonkin, when we found out that was indeed a false flag operation, for those that are young or don't know, that's what put us into the Vietnam War. They told us that the North Vietnamese fired at 2 of our ships in the Gulf of Tonkin, which is an active war, and we, of course, responded like 9/11. Somebody got to pay for this if you attack the United States of America. And so blindly then everyone got behind the Vietnam War because we get angry. We're all patriotic. But we don't realize our government will deceive us. False flag operations have been going on for a long time. The Ruckstock Fire of Germany was a false flag operation. There are many false flag operations that put countries into war, and it's done so that the people will support it. And I'll tell you how angry I was. I was teaching at Harvard in 2004 when McNamara came through and admitted it. Harvard banned me from the building because I was irate. 58,000 of my generation killed, probably 1 million Vietnamese killed over an event that never happened. It never happened. You know? So always be skeptical. Don't just because some news person says it or it's written in a paper does not mean it's true. Do your own investigating. Like when people attack me when I question 9/11, I always look at them and say, well, other than mainstream media and the government, what investigating have you ever done and whom have you talked to? And they always say, no one. I've talked to people that were there, both places. I spoke to a young woman, April Gallup, Sergeant, United States Army, top secret clearance. She was in the room in the Pentagon where the alleged plane hit. Well, she has post-traumatic stress today. Why? She has such vivid memories. And she told me, Governor, I didn't see a plane. There was no luggage, there was no wreckage, there was nothing. She assumed it was a bomb that went off. And she started to say that, and our government locked her up for 48 hours so she couldn't speak or be interviewed. Because that wasn't the official story that they wanted out there. By the way, how many know that the day before 9/11, Donald Rumsfeld called a press conference where he stated that there were like $1 trillion they couldn't account for in the Pentagon? Isn't it ironic that that was the exact place where the alleged plane hit? All records destroyed. You never hear that press conference again. I guess that's just circumstantial, but we both know Colonel L. Fletcher Prouty says nothing just happens. Everything is planned. Way in the back with the leather jacket on back there.
Hi, Governor.
Hi.
I'm just curious to know if you ever got a chance to look at any of the declassified JFK documents that President Bush Sr. declassified in the 90s. And what role do you think Lyndon Johnson had in the assassination event?
I think Lyndon Johnson, they made him aware it was going to happen and he did nothing to prevent it because Lyndon Johnson wanted to be president and his days were numbered. Because Lyndon Johnson, Kennedy had already made overtures that he was going to dump Johnson on the second election because Johnson was neck deep in the Billy Saul Estes, Bobby Baker scandals in Texas. And you notice the minute JFK was dead, those two scandals just magically disappeared pretty well. And so I think that he knew about it and did nothing to prevent it because he knew that he would be the next president. Do I think he planned it? No, I don't.